Seeing the gods of poverty in a dream. There was a fellow by the name of Mook Yusai who was abjectly poor. He always put his faith in Daiko Kuten and prayed for good luck. But there was never any indication that this was working. One night in a dream, he had no idea where he was, but there were the seven gods of good fortune gathered together with blue, yellow, and vermilion tapestries spread about gold and silver sake bottles on earth or rather unglazed earthen cups, trying out various kinds of wine and side dishes, singing and dancing to 13-string zithers, assembling male and female entertainers, and indulging in all sorts of refined amusements, excusez-moi. Moreover, when he looked off to the side, there were some miserably thin and worn-out fellows wearing ragged clothes and looking like beggars, grasping at dregs of tofu. They ate what they could and sat listening to the others enviously. From among this group, 5 or 6 men moved away from the others, sat down on the edge of a boulder, washed their feet in the clear stream, slapped their thighs, and sang. Then, taking up bamboo flutes, they played away with their minds' ease. The timbre of the flutes was quiet and calm, with a hint of envy, and, contrary to what might have been expected, seemed richer than all the amusements of the seven gods of good fortune. Mook Yusai thought this was strange. He drew near them and said, "What kind of gentleman you may be, you have a shabby appearance, yet even in front of the extraordinary beauty of the exalted seven gods of good fortune, you show no reserve but deliberately gather and even entertain yourselves with elegance." The men replied, "What quick perception! Such a mentality is the very foundation of enlightenment. When you're not receptive, even though you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you could lodge with Yao, Shun, and Confucius and still make no progress in the way. We are the gods of poverty, but why should we be ashamed in front of those gods of good fortune? We and they, all of us, have our own fates. Not only that, but while they are on friendly terms with emperors, aristocrats, feudal lords, the privileged class, and yes, wealthy townspeople, and provide them with different kinds of luxury and splendor, they're not intimate with men of virtue at all. Now, even though we look this way, in China we were on familiar terms with men like Xiao Fu and Hu, or even Su Yu, and among the Confucians, Yan Yuan, Min Tse, Qian, and Yan Xian. We know the pleasures of a split bamboo bowl are good for a plate and a narrow lane, and would not exchange them for the wealth and honor of kings and lords. For this reason, though those gods drape themselves in brocade, eat fine delicacies, and go through the length and breadth of worldly pleasures, such things are hardly worth a straw. Your poverty is your bit of fate. No matter how much faith you put in Dai Kokin, or how much you pray to the seven gods, right, of good fortune, they are unable to get on friendly terms with you. For this is something that heaven will not sanction. And what heaven will not sanction, they cannot be at liberty with. Your offerings of boiled rice and red beans only add to your woes. Those who are on friendly terms with both day and night are the gods of poverty that look like hungry ghosts in that crowd over there. See? And it's not that they come here from another place to haunt you. When you were born, they accompanied you from inside your mummy's womb. So even if you tried to scrape them off, you could not withdraw, and even if you tried to beat them to death, they couldn't die. This is just the turn of fortune's wheel. But if you will understand this principle, let it sink deep into your mind. Settle yourself in your dire poverty and not lose its pleasures. The gods of poverty will be joyful along with you, and there will be no reason to be ashamed, or rather there will be no reason to be shamed by the seven gods of good fortune. Because we were on such friendly terms with men like Xiao Fu, Su Yu, Yan Tse, Min Tse, and Yuan Xian, we were transformed, and even now haven't lost that joy. Ha 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 ha. So saying, they again slapped their thighs and amused himself in song. That's what it says here. It doesn't say themselves, it says himself in song. Mook Yusai was astonished and said, "This is truly a lesson hard to come by, but I have no idea about that kind of pleasure. I would like to ask you to set forth that way to me." The gods of poverty said, "Long ago, Lord Wu Yang said there are many people who are unable to obtain the most beautiful thing in the world and the great happiness at the same time. Now, what is the most beautiful? To live with riches and honor, to possess much gold, silver, and material wealth, to have the finest dress and food, to be in the warm favor of one's superiors, to have a wealth of power and prestige, and to have everything you wish for. This is what the human mind considers to be success, and so is envied by all the world. All right? Let me read that again. This is what the human mind considers to be success, and so is envied, by the entire world. Then what is the greatest happiness? To be without desire and to know what is enough, to be perfectly fair and selfless, not to fight about what is right and wrong with things, to understand the very foundation of one's mind, not to be confused by life or death or good fortune and calamity, to entrust life to life, and to exert all your powers in following that way, and to entrust death to death and be content in that return. Not to envy wealth and honor, not to loathe poverty and low birth, not to be obsessed by thoughts of the differences between happiness and anger, or likes and dislikes, but rather following good and bad fortune, or prosperity and decline as one meets them, and calmly enjoying oneself in the midst of creation and change. This is the greatest happiness under heaven. I envelop the universe by means of my mind, and by means of the universe there is nothing that obstructs my mind. Riches and honor, good luck and calamity are elsewhere. When you seek after such things, you may obtain them or you may not. This is not something that is guaranteed. The great happiness is within yourself. If you seek your mind wholeheartedly, you will obtain it for sure. Simply do not seek after illusion. Confucius said, and he's always saying, is human-heartedness so far away, or even far away? If I seek human-heartedness, it is right here. Human-heartedness is nothing other than the great happiness. When you pursue things, you are unable to attain them, and yet persist in desiring them, you merely... Human-heartedness is nothing other than the great happiness. Full stop. When you pursue things, are unable to obtain them, and yet persist in desiring them, you merely torment yourself. You exhaust your life because of things and will not know contentment. If you pursue fame, you will be exhausted for the sake of a name. If you pursue gold and silver, you will be exhausted for the sake of gold and silver. If you pursue utensils and furnishings, empties, you will be exhausted for the sake of utensils and furnishings. For those who love the sensual, they will be exhausted for the sake of the sensual. And those who don't realize that they are making their precious minds slaves to other things will use their minds like this and exert themselves to the very end of the day. Nowadays, people call men who are skillful in such matters wise. In the past, they called them fools and men of little caliber. When you use your mind in this way, you get farther from the great happiness day by day. But the man who has even a glimpse of the region of the great happiness has no mind to pursue riches and honor, or good fortune and happiness. The wise men and men of noble character in the past who were wealthy and exalted were rare. From time to time there were men who received high rank and large stipends, but they did not pursue such things themselves. Because the genius and virtues of these men were not hidden, they were promoted by the superiors and thus only received these things unavoidably. But because they were not always in tune with the minds of men of little caliber, many of them were slandered or even slandered and driven away. This was not unusual in either China or Japan. And although we say they were driven away in terms of their own great happiness, such as myself, they were not hindered in the least. Thus, when meeting such circumstances, tossing away wealth, honor, prosperity, and stipend, I think it's how you pronounce it, stipend, was like throwing away broken straw boots. This was because what they treasured was within themselves rather than within wealth, honor, or even honor, prosperity, and stipend. I'll have to Google stipend, Wikipedia. Wise men know that such things are fetters and bonds, and there were many men who took their leave and did not receive them, even though they were offered. Su Yu, Yen Se Lu, and among the Confucians, Yen Yuan, Min Se Qian, and Qi Chan Chai were of this sort. So say it's the sermon, the demon's sermon on the martial arts.